Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our channel Think Tank India. I am Arpita, and today with me, Dr. Vasudha, and we are very honored to have with us much respected Dr. Roger Gopaul. He is the High Commissioner of Republic of Trinidad and Tobago to the Republic of India. He is also accredited to Japan, Singapore, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. He was formerly the High Commissioner to the South Africa and 10 other African countries, and he was awarded an honorary doctorate from Rabindranath Tagore University in the year 2021 for his contribution in the promotion of Vedic philosophy. He is also a workshop facilitator in the areas of business strategy, financial management, and governance. And Dr. Gopal has presently presented in many conferences and has published in peer-reviewed journals. And he is one of the contributing authors the book Strategic Communication, published by Oxford University Press, December 2021. And Dr. Gopal is also author of the book The Ramayana 75 Inspirational Verses for the Modern Age, published by Motilal Bandarsidass Publishing House, February 2022. So, Namaste, sir. Welcome to our channel, Think Tank India.
Yes, namaste. Thank you very much for having me on your channel, Think Tank. I do appreciate this opportunity, and I bring greetings from the High Commission for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And just to clarify, my doctorate is not from Rabindranath Tagore University. It is from Durban University of
Okay.
Technology, South Africa. It is an earned doctorate, not an honorary doctorate.
Okay. So, sir, my first question is to you that what is the history of Indian indentured laborers in South Africa, South America, and Caribbean?
Well, that's an excellent question. It could be a very loaded question if we are to really examine the full history of what indentured laborer system was. So let's first clarify and define what indentured laborer meant. Now, when we say South America, remember we are then looking at South America in terms of Central America, then South America, starting from Mexico all the way down to Brazil. And more so, the majority of these Latin American countries were not under British rule, they remained under Spanish rule, and
Spanish rule.
therefore there was a limitation in terms of how many indentured laborers of East Indian descent that actually went to Latin America. However, the dynamics change tremendously if we are looking at the Caribbean islands, including Suriname and Guyana, which is actually geographically located in South America, but they are not considered to be Latinos in the strictest sense because their population and their colonial empire was not from Spain, but mainly from the Dutch in Suriname and the English in Guyana. And then if we look at the Caribbean islands, we would then need to include Trinidad and Tobago also being a part of the British Empire and Jamaica being part of the British Empire. So as we look at the Indian indentured laborer system, I will then speak about that system as it pertains to Suriname and Guyana in that aspect of South America and also Trinidad and Jamaica. So, and before we go further, I would also like to clarify that if we look at the indentured laborer system, in Suriname, it was a bit different because they were brought there by the Dutch. However, if we look at Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and Jamaica, we were all under the British colony, just like India. So that makes our dynamics a bit different. So we were all part of the British Empire, and therefore our system of indentureship was more or less the same. So that is, I just wanted to ensure that we understand indentureship from that perspective. Now,
Sir, what
yes,
what is
please
Trinidadian
answer.
Hindustani?
What is the
Trinidadian Hindustani?
Okay, well, before we go to the Trinidadian Hindustani, as I said, those questions can be very loaded questions that in itself is a topic. But before we go there, let me first address what is this indentureship, what indentureship meant, how it occurred, why it happened, and so our Indian audience, and if we do have an international audience, could get a better understanding. So I'll give you a quick story. Last year, I brought a group from Trinidad and Tobago to perform Ramlila in Delhi,
Okay.
in Lucknow, and also in Ayodhya. So while they were performing their Ramlila, a TV crew came to me and wanted to do an interview. So I said, great, let's do this interview. And during the interview, the person said, do you know, I had no idea that Indians were so far away in Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago. So then the interviewer asked me, could you give us a little of your history? So I said, I'm quite surprised when I visit universities, big universities, that they are not so familiar with indentureship and what happened, because it is not just my history, but it is Indian history. Because the East Indians left India, and more so, the East Indians left India numbered close to 2 million Indians, mainly from your area, Kolkata. Some, of course,
Oh,
from Madras, yeah. So, no matter where they were from, they were then taken to Kolkata, put on various ships, and left. So, with 2 million people around the period of 1933, then it paused a bit, started back around 1938, paused a bit again, started back in, not sorry, in 1833, then 1838, started back in 1844, ended in 1917, is part of Indian history, not just the history of Fiji and Mauritius, Guyana, Suriname, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, but is part of Indian history. So I think it is equally important that Indians understand that history, and not just we of the indentured Indian diaspora to, to embrace it as part of our history only. Now, so let me also, on that note, address another issue. So I was asked to speak at a university on the Indian diaspora just recently. So I was there, I got ready, I was really excited to speak on the topic. So I went, and there were two speakers before me, and the speaker, one of the speaker told the audience, which were made up of mainly PhD students and master students in history, sociology, politics, etc., that we need to look at the Indian diaspora in Canada and in the UK and in the US. And then they said they are very happy to invite me to speak on the issue. So then I said, you have totally missed what the Indian diaspora means to us. Because when we talk about indentureship, that was a group that left India. And the question is why? The history behind it is very different from the group that left India on a plane, probably Air India or American Airlines, sat in either first class or economy class, had a meal during their flight to land in London, New York, or Toronto, and call themselves the Indian diaspora is not the same as we, our foreparents, who boarded a boat in Kolkata and traveled for almost 3 to 6 months to our destination under contract to work. So, what caused it? I think that's the first thing we need to address. What caused this movement of almost 2 million people of Indian descent in the early mid 1880s or the 1800s to 1917? What was that major cause? That is something that we have to address. And the cause is very simple. There was a major famine and poverty that was sweeping across the northern provinces and Bihar. Now, there is a theory that poverty and that famine was deliberately caused by the colonial masters, the British Raj. There's a theory out there that is saying that it was poverty by design and not by chance. Now, whether it be by design and not by chance or not, something happened during that period. In 1833, slavery was abolished by the British Parliament, which meant that the slaves left the plantations in all the British colonies and no longer wanted to work the land for good reason, because of trauma, hundreds of years of trauma. What this then meant was that Great Britain and their colonies had lost labor. As a result, Britain had to find cheap labor somewhere, and the Indian indentured system provided a substitute to slavery. So what they did, the Indians, they realized, would have been cheap labor, easy to exploit, and therefore create for them a labor force that they could easily use. So they then went on to hire a number of Indians, as I said, close to 2 million, and ship them to Mauritius, to Fiji, to Guyana, to Trinidad and Tobago, to Jamaica, to Suriname. Now, let me give you a real story. And this story was taken, I'll give you the exact citing of it. It was taken from the, one second. Right. So it was taken from the Indian Immigration Commission report of 1887. In it, a story was given by an East Indian immigrant, East Indian indentured immigrant, who said that she was told that she would be going to babysit for some whites, some Britishers, and her trip would only be 6 hours long, not knowing that her trip was actually 3 months long. And when she landed, it was not a babysit, but it was a cut cane, 7 days a week, with a day beginning at 3 a.m. These Indians did not read English. They spoke Bhojpuri and Audi, not even Hindi. And they were given contracts to sign that they did not understand. And they signed those contracts for 5 years. And for 5 years, they were subjected to the most ruthless and obscene conditions imaginable. That is the history. So when they landed in Guyana, which was in 1838, approximately 289,000 East Indians landed. So just let's say about 2 lakh plus. In Trinidad and Tobago, 1,48,000 landed, and in Jamaica, 39,000 landed. In Guyana, it was in the year 1838. In Trinidad, it was in the year 1845. And in Jamaica, sorry, I believe it might have been just after Trinidad and Tobago. So that is our history, and that is how indented laborers came about. Now, before we speak about the Trinidad Hindustani, we have to first understand who came, because who came was a significant part of creating that demographic of the Hindustani, the Caribbean Indian. So when they left, where did they come from? As I said, just to repeat, almost 75% came from the northern provinces. So, like for instance, my great grandfather came from Basti. Some came from Bihar, and others, which was in the minority, came from Madras, which is modern day Chennai. So 75% from mainly eastern UP, 13.5% from Bihar, the balance from mainly Madras and to a lesser extent Bombay and the Punjab area, but very few. So they came to Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, etc. So that covers a proper understanding of what the Indian indentured system looked like. Now we can move on to the other question. So you understand the history.
Sir, what is Trinidadi and Hindustani?
Right. So honestly, I am not 100% sure, because we don't really call ourselves Trinidadian Hindustani, but I will explain Indo-Trinidadian culture and what it is. Now, when our forefathers came, remember the majority of the laborers would have been from poverty-stricken families. So we are not talking about the scholars and acharyas of Hinduism and Indian philosophy. These would have been very simple folks coming to our region. So what did they have? Honestly, just the Ramayana. Just the stories of Sri Ram and Lakshman, Sita Mata, and Hanuman. And they had their folk songs, all their bhajans, and their dantal, what we call their instruments. So they had their dolak, their harmonium, etc. Their little dhoti to wear. That's all they came with. Not scholars, no swamis, and no mahats and those things. Very simple people. And they came in a region of the world where there were already African slaves, prior slaves, Chinese, Europeans, and then these Indians come in that looked different, spoke a different language, practiced a very different culture. So you can imagine how different they would be and how they would stand out. But now they have to exist. So they are existing now in a system where they are holding strong to a religion that is not practiced by anyone else, a language that is not known by anyone else, but they have to survive. As a result, in Trinidad and Tobago, Hindu marriages were never recognized until the 1950s. So over 100 years of Indian presence in Trinidad and Tobago without a Hindu marriage being recognized. In fact, there was absolutely no Hindu schools for the children of the Indian descendants. And why I say Hindu is because in 1921, a census was done. 1921. And it showed that over 80% of those who came during 1845 to 1917, over 80% were Hindus. Yet, not a school system in place for them, no recognition of marriages for their legitimacy, which then meant that their wives and their children were not legally recognized by the state. So, what did we do? How did we survive? I cannot speak Hindi, Bhojpuri, Audi, or any of the languages because our system was now tuned to fit into the British educational system. So the language was gone. But another census taken in 2011, which I believe still stands true today, is that among the East Indian population, Hinduism declined from 80% of the Indian population from 1921 to only 50% or less in 2011. And I will not be surprised if it is even less today in 2023. But to a large extent, the East Indians, which now make up the majority percentage of the population of Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, still practice an aspect of Indian identity that is evolutionary. It has evolved based upon our new world, a Caribbean culture that not necessarily resembles what we know in India today. So, as I said, these questions are very loaded questions. So it's not easy to just jump from one to the next without giving the true essence to the answers required. Now, just to address that issue a little further. The East Indians in Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, how we do a Hindu wedding is very different from what you would see at any Hindu wedding in any part of India. Because we still practice it the way that it was done in 1845. We still use the instruments that our forefathers used in 1845. And I've been through Delhi as an example, looking for these instruments, and no one knew what it was. How our puja is conducted is even different from what we see practiced in India today. So, to a large extent, our Indianness, our Indian identity is fundamentally different from what is being done in India. So, we celebrate Diwali, we celebrate Eid al-Fitr. But yet, for Diwali, for us, which is now a national holiday, Hindus and Indians generally will abstain from any meat or non-vegetarian for almost 21 days and do Lakshmi Puja throughout the period until Diwali. Absolutely no alcohol, strictly non-vegetarian, strictly vegetarian, sorry. And to a large extent, we came to India and then we saw people consuming alcohol and some eating meat on Diwali day and gambling on Diwali night. And I remember it was a cultural shock. To each their own, of course, and much respect to all, but it was just different from what we practice. And I had took a little while to get accustomed because I never thought it was like that. It was just different to us. So our Indian identity is not so much of a Indian, but is now a Caribbean Indian that has merged with our Caribbeanness, our Western Hemisphere, and our Western Hemispheric neighbors. So we enjoyed Caribbean life. We enjoy where we are, who we are. So it is not the same. So even for me in India, I am a foreigner. Yes, so please ask me anything.
Sorry, sir. Sir, what is the future of the India-Caribbean relationship?
Well, let's look at the historicity and then we would move into the future. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have had a tremendous amount of evolution taking place, as well as Guyana. In fact, many the world over will know names like Sunil Narayan or this great cricketer Shiv Narayan Chandapal. They have been from Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago. We must be familiar with the names of V.S. Naipaul, great author from, again, Trinidad and Tobago. So we have made our mark in terms of our presence. Politically, Chedi Jagan, which I would love to talk about, but he himself is a topic. His, his work, his contribution, his ideologies is a full 45 minutes in itself. But I will say that Chedi Jagan was the very first head of government who was of East Indian descent outside of Asia. Then Trinidad and Tobago, had the likes of Basdeo Pandey, the first prime minister of Indian descent in Trinidad and Tobago. Then we also had Satnarayan Sharma, who was a chief justice in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have seen the rise of Indians in politics, in the Caribbean, and in business, and in the arts and literature, and their major contributions. Now, because of that, the Indian diaspora still looks towards India and still love India and still see India as their ancestral homeland. Make no mistakes about that. In fact, Shah Rukh Khan owns the Trinidad and Tobago Knight Riders. So the connection is still there. We look at Bollywood movies. You know, we are big fans of Bollywood. Amitabh Bachchan is still a god in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's to give you an idea. The Indian diaspora in Guyana and Trinidad, Jamaica, look at Modi ji with great admiration and would be willing and happy any day for Modi to land his foot on our shores. And he will be received with the greatest of love and affection given. So that is our connection still. Now, where do we go from here? Well, the Indian government, under the astute leadership of Prime Minister Modi ji and his cabinet, have done a remarkable job in reaching out to the Indian diaspora throughout the globe. And as a diplomat, I must give credence and recognition to that amazing effort by this government. And I'm very proud to see how they have connected. So much so that we have been able to host Ram Leela training in Trinidad and Tobago, sponsored by the government of India, then bring Ramlila groups from Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Suriname to perform in cities such as Ayodhya, Lucknow, Varanasi, and Delhi. Last year, we brought a group of Trinidadians and Guyanese singers who perform our version of Hindi songs in India that drew sold out crowds, even though we didn't charge any money, it was free. But the crowds were packed and people loved it because they were now able to see Indian culture in the Indian diaspora. Also, the Indian government works closely with us in areas of language. So we are now offering free classes in Hindi to all citizens of our country. And happy to say, we have Hindu schools throughout Trinidad and Tobago that teaches Hindi at the primary school level and secondary school level. We have over 300 mandirs, Hindu temples, in a population of just 1.3 million people, 13 lakh, yet over 300 mandirs. So, and we have a very close relationship in terms of trade with the Indian government, mainly in the areas of pharmaceuticals and energy-based products, and that will continue in the future. So the relationship is close, it is dynamic, it is fantastic, and I expect this to only grow into better and better as the years go by.
Sir, one thing I want to know that Trinidad and Ghana was under British rule, but
Yes.
how Suriname came under Dutch rule? And we know that one of Indian originated footballer was very famous from Suriname. That was Ruud Gullit.
You see, in the Caribbean region, including countries such as Guyana and Suriname, we were under many different rules, to be honest. So I'll use Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana as an example. We were under the Dutch, then the Spanish, then the English. So we constantly changed hands. So it all depended on which empire wanted which territory, and then they will invade, they will fight, and then they will take over. So, like, for example, in my country, Spanish is still our second language, and our main city is named Port of Spain, not Port of England, because the Spanish once ruled. But in terms of Suriname, the Dutch ruled, but the British never went to invade, so they just remained under Dutch. But lucky for them, they still speak Hindi. Whereas in Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, we lost the language almost in totality. Just few words I know, like pagal. I know pagal. I know danyavad. Yes, I know one or two words. So what I have done, I have my sons are now doing Hindi, and I have also joined a Hindi class. So I am learning Hindi as well. So I'm hoping that as we now teach Hindi in Trinidad and Tobago, and now that I'm also learning Hindi here, that we could revitalize and innovate this language, that it could now become part of our everyday language once again as it once was.
Okay, sir. Sir, you came to our channel. It's our pleasure. And again, we'll invite you for another show. Please,
Yes, thank
again,
you.
you should come to our channel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to say
Arpita?
that I want to say that thank you for coming our channel and for and enlightened us by your insightful talks. And sir, it's a very interesting history, and I don't know how much research has been done in all this unknown history of Trinidad, between Trinidad and Tobago, on this all that South American history. But I want to indulge to all the scholars, those who are working in Indian history, they much focus on this countries about their research or
Yes.
to explore more about this.
Well,
What do you think, sir?
before we close, I would like to say, first of all, I would like to say thank you, of course, to both
For
of
our
you
pleasure,
and
sir.
to the think tank for hosting me and giving giving the listenership this opportunity to just engage in this discussion to understand what is happening. And feel free, invite me to the University of Kolkata. I'm happy to speak on this history of ours and to share this history. It will be my pleasure. So I do look forward to engaging you and interacting with you much more in the future.
Definitely,
Thank you
sir.
so much.
Yes,
Thank you
thank you
so
all.
much.
And sir,
Yes,
we know you also have a channel. Please say about that to us.
yes, yes, I will. Thank you. So I
No,
say yes.
please tell us about your. You also have your own
Oh, my
YouTube
personal
channel.
channel. Yes, it's
Yes,
called
tell us
Journey.
about us.
You see, as I started earlier on by saying that when our forefathers came, they were not the scholars of ours of Hindu thought. They were not the scholars of Sanatan Dharma. But the onus fell upon us, the younger generation who was able to pursue higher education. And with the support of our foreparents who were they they came as very hard workers, and we give so much tribute to them. But the biggest tribute that I believe we can give to them is to hold strong to Sanatan Dharma and to teach a deeper understanding of Sanatan Dharma in this age of information. So my channel, which is a journey of enlightenment, is focused on bringing the deeper meaning of Vedanta to the wider Caribbean. So I expound on the philosophies of the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and Ramayana. So not just from in terms of the story, but in terms of the philosophy.
Thank you, sir. Please,
Most welcome.
audience, also watch Dr. Gopal's channel. Please
Yes,
watch
thank you.
his channel also.
Thank you
So,
so
sir,
much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. Thank you for coming.
Yes,
Good
thank
night
you. It's
and
my pleasure.
and with the audience, please subscribe, like, and share our channel Think Tank India and also search channels also. Sir,
Thank you.
again, and a great namaskar from our side. Thank
Yes,
you
thank
very
you.
much.
Namaskar. Yes, and Shubhratri.
Yes, Subhratri to you also,
Shubhratri.
and
Yes. Thank you. Bye bye.
bye bye.